It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you as always. I am sitting here in the Furman Garner Performance Studio at KUAF. I always like to give them a shout out because they've given me a home to record this wonderful podcast that you listen to on a regular basis. So thank you to KUAF. And as always, know that you can also hear this podcast on Ozarks at Large every Tuesday, both at 12 noon and at 7 p.m. We hope that this remains like that for a very long time. That way I don't have to come back and edit these podcasts in 2 or 3 years from now. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But no, seriously, I really appreciate the folks here at KUAF, Kyle Kellums and Lee Wood, and so many others that make this such an amazing public radio station. I grew up on public radio and I really appreciate it. But today's guest is a local individual that's really making things happen in the culinary scene. And he's someone that I had connected with a while back, and we just couldn't coordinate our schedules. And I finally heard from his PR person, and they were like, oh, well, you know, he's might be available to have a conversation. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a plan. So that guest is Juan Bahena, and Juan is the owner of Tula, which is a Mexican restaurant right on the square in Fayetteville. If you haven't been to Tula, I highly recommend that you check it out. You don't know what you're missing. But without further ado, I want to welcome Juan Bahena to the podcast. How are you doing?
How's it going, sir? Thank you so much for having me, Randy.
Good. Man, it is good to have you on the podcast. I'd love for you just to, give our audience a little bit about your background and as we like to call it here at the podcast, your superhero origin story.
Okay. Yeah, great. So I'm originally from Chicago.
Okay.
Grew up there. My family's Mexican, and they moved to Chicago from Guerrero in Mexico, which is a state southern central of Mexico.
Okay. Is that next to...
It's close to Mexico City.
Okay, Mexico City.
We're about 2.5 hours from Mexico City.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Okay.
Grew up in Chicago. I moved to Arkansas, came to the University of Arkansas, so I'm an alumni.
Okay.
Graduated from the Fayetteville School of Architecture. So
did you really?
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy when I tell people that, because they really didn't expect for me to be in the restaurant scene and the hospitality industry. But my background's architecture. Got a master's in construction management. And I've been in construction since I graduated in 2012. So it's crazy. I was actually talking to a server of mine that's working with us at Tula, and she's part of the Fayetteville School of Architecture. And when she found out I was an alumni, we started talking, and she said, "When did you graduate, Juan?" I was 2012. That's crazy to think. It's already 12 years from now.
I know. You look like a baby, dude. I got to tell you that. We'll put a picture on the show notes, but you look like a young man, a young man. So, but no, I think that's great. I mean, your genes are serving you well, and
great.
And I can appreciate that. I think that a lot of people don't realize how great of an architectural program the U of A has with the Fayetteville School of Architecture.
No, it is. It's one of the top in the country. A lot of people come to Arkansas to be part of that program, and I was one of them. I always had envisioned in my head that I was going to go back to Chicago and be an architect and work downtown and design a skyscraper, right? That was always the goal. And, life is life. And, that obviously changed. But I'm happy to be in Northwest Arkansas and happy to be in Fayetteville.
Yeah. And so you've got to witness a lot of the change that has taken place. So if you graduated in 2012, that means you were here like 2008 almost, right around the
Correct.
time of the financial crisis, the meltdown. So you saw Northwest Arkansas. They had the ice storm in 2009. I mean, you were probably here for all that. So you've seen Northwest Arkansas at the highs and the lows. The highs being kind of right now, right? We're kind of in this place where Northwest Arkansas is one of the best places to live. Fayetteville has been named one of the top 5 places to live for several years now on multiple reports, whether it's U.S. News and World Report and others. But you've seen a lot of the change. How has that impacted you and the way that you view this area?
It makes me happy, honestly. When I moved here and, I would tell family I was in Arkansas, they would kind of laugh at it, right? They're like, what are you doing in Arkansas? Why don't you come back to Chicago? And it's, that's kind of who I am, right?
Right.
And just looking at a lot of the architecture, a lot of the amenities that we now have here in Northwest Arkansas, a lot of it's been positive change. I think that we're gearing towards being a metro area, right? It feels more like a city.
Yeah. From
the culinary scene to the arts, momentary, crystal bridges, all these different things that you're seeing, all these people investing in Northwest Arkansas. It's great to see it. And I'm, with my background in architecture, I'm really happy to see now great buildings being developed. Downtown Springdale being redeveloped.
Yeah.
Downtown Rogers.
Huge. I was just at the groundbreaking for Big Emma.
Okay.
Which is about to happen, which is going to be, part of it's going to be affordable housing.
Yeah, the apartment complex.
Yeah.
So all this stuff that you're seeing now in the area, it's good to see.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy.
That's awesome. So obviously you graduate 2012 and you decide, obviously, you're going to do the whole architecture, construction space. Where was culinary or food introduced into the equation, or was it always there?
To me, it was introduced back in 2018, 19, I would say.
Okay.
So after I graduated from the University of Arkansas, I went on to work for a big general contractor here in the area, C.R. Crawford.
Okay.
And to them, I always give them thanks because they took a chance on me to be part of their team. And it really opened up a lot of doors in terms of meeting people, networking, having a lot of connections here in the area. And back in 2018. So my wife and I got married in 2018. So soon after, that's when the idea started to kind of float around. And being from Chicago, I go a lot, like at least every 2 months. I'm in Chicago visiting my family, and people would always ask me, Juan, why do you go to Chicago a lot? And, what my two answers were always, I want to see my family. I have a very big family. We grew up together, literally blocks away from each other.
What part of Chicago?
Southside Chicago.
Okay, Southside.
So my grandparents moved, and they lived California Avenue, which is a big avenue there in Chicago. And literally either one block to the east or one block to the west, we all lived by each other.
Okay.
So I grew up around my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, and we're a pretty big family. So to this day, there's always somebody's birthday or something's going on.
Right.
That, grandma or grandpa are in town from Mexico, so we go out and we visit. And part of it also was food. I miss the food.
Yeah.
I miss not just my mom's or my grandma's food, but just good Mexican food as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started looking at what was available here in Northwest Arkansas, I really wasn't impressed. And I wasn't happy with the options that we had. With seeing the growth that Northwest Arkansas is having, there was a lot of great restaurants that were coming into the area, but I still felt that there was a need for a good Mexican restaurant. So that's how it kind of all started. And it also started that way because at C.R. Crawford, being the youngest estimator at their office, I was given all the restaurant accounts. So I was dealing with restaurants almost on a daily basis in terms of getting them built or construction.
Yeah.
I always like to say I worked on 28 Slim Chickens. Slim Chickens was a big customer of C.R. Crawford, and I was able to meet them and work on when it was their growth in terms of getting franchises and growing out of Northwest Arkansas in the surrounding states. So, I did Slim Chickens all the way to Kansas City and all the way down south to Houston and west, past Oklahoma, OKC. So there was always that part of it that I also had an understanding of how and what it took to build a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah. We had Tom Gordon on probably a couple of years ago now, maybe 3 years ago. We had him on the podcast kind of talking about the origin stories of Slim Chickens, which is really interesting. And, when you think about, they just celebrated, I think, 21 years.
Yeah.
And the original Slim Chickens is the one that's right on North College. And it looked so much different back in the day than it does now.
Yeah,
so,
I remember that. I used to go with my roommates, and I think they had like a 50 tender meal for like $20 or something like that. Yeah, it was crazy. We'd show up.
You wish you could get that now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that's funny. So, no, I'm happy for them. And they've gone international, and they continue to grow. And so it's interesting to see that you were part of that. And, I'm not surprised because, different companies kind of help each other out, right? So
Correct.
that C.R. Crawford helped out Slim Chickens in their ascent as they grew as a restaurant organization. And so you do get exposure to a lot of different things here in Northwest Arkansas that I think people on the outside looking in wouldn't think that you would have exposure to.
Correct. No, I totally agree. I think that C.R. Crawford kind of shifting to them, they grew exponentially. I remember when I showed up in 2015, they had closed their year at 40 million.
Mm-hmm.
I left in 2020 and they were on track to making 320 million.
Wow.
So it was a very exponential growth that I was a part of. And like I said, it was good times. I was happy to just learn as much as I can and could at that moment. And I saw how they, talking about relationships and growing together, as they grew, all their subcontractors grew as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was good to see because I still see these people and I'm like, man, I'm happy that they're where they're at, and that, you know, to a sense, I was also part of helping them be that and grow because I was, you know, giving out contracts, helping them out. So it was a lot of great things that happened.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, okay, so I understand the pull for the culinary. At what point, because I mean, you got to recognize or understand that, you know, opening up a restaurant is like one of the hardest businesses to open, period, right? What was your thought when you crossed that threshold?
So it is actually, and even going because of that kind of stigma that it has, it's harder for you to even get banks to take you serious, right?
Yeah.
It's the highest risk that a bank would pick up on a restaurant. So now imagine me coming in on 2018, 2019, asking these banks, hey, can you help me out because I'm trying to open up a restaurant?
Right.
And they would say, okay, Juan, well, what's your background? Oh, well, it's actually in construction. Okay. So do you have family that's in the restaurant business? No. You know, do you have a chef or anybody that you would want to bring in? The answer was no. So a lot of these banks at that moment were very hesitant and the support wasn't there because of those reasons. And taking that on, it was one of those situations where, you know, I believed in what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought that what Tula is now was going to be great for Northwest Arkansas. And because of that, I just kept on trying to figure it out, right? And I think I got connected with different people to really push that forward
Mm-hmm.
and make it happen. Yeah, you know, not knowing a lot about restaurants and not knowing that a global pandemic was about to happen. We opened in January of 2020. It was a lot of learning, and it was a big learning curve that we had to go through. But the good thing that I see now, and this is the reason why I'm so happy to be not just in Northwest Arkansas, but Fayetteville particularly, is the community was out there to support, and the community was out there to help. And the same way that we talked about having subcontractors grow with general contractors and the construction that's going on in the area, I really felt embraced by all these people that came in and helped us out.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, without their help, might be a different story.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And I remember when you guys opened, I was like, man, the timing of this was impeccable. I mean, you know, and it's facetious because it was just tough times.
No, it was.
Yeah. So, but no, I mean, you're in a great place. You're there in the Prior Center building and right there on the ground floor. And I know you've participated in several events that have taken place there, like the pub crawl that Startup Junkie has and several others. What helped you kind of turn the corner or helped you realize, you know, this is actually something that we can do and be successful with? I mean, was it the food itself? Was it the concept? What was it about Tula that really, you know, kind of cemented you to double down and really kind of dig in and make this thing happen?
I'm always big about value, right? So I think that that's something that I look at on a daily basis. Is what's the value that I'm getting as a consumer, as a person that's trying to get something. And when we were looking at opening Tula, I always had faith in the food.
Yeah.
But to me, it has to be more than food. Being in downtown Fayetteville on the square location, my background in architecture and the way that we designed the place is the ambience, right? The hospitality in terms of what's the type of service that we wanted people to have at Tula. All of those things added together is what I think, like you mentioned, doubling down. I think that's what it is. The food could be great, but if you don't have those other things, it's going to be hard for somebody to really have that value. And I think that that's where it kind of, my approach was different. I think, you know, being younger and looking at things differently, I really want there to be a value, right? For there to be the location, the ambience, you know, how do you feel inside of that place? You know, what are you listening to? What are you smelling? All these senses. And that's stuff that I learned, you know, through my background in architecture,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
You always want to design a space that's getting people all their senses, right? Whether it's the visual, the touching, the smells, all that stuff. So I think that's kind of what really made us different.
Yeah. So you pretty much had a black box to work with when you got that space.
That is correct.
Okay, awesome. Okay, now that all explains it, because I did wonder why. It does have a very unique feel to it. Even from that outside perspective, when you first walk in, it's kind of inviting. You want to kind of check in and see what it's like. And I've had dinner there a few times, and every time it's been a really great experience. And I do enjoy, I should say, I have enjoyed going to your restaurant multiple times with like larger groups and smaller groups. And it's always been nice, so I really appreciate that. So tell me a little bit about the cuisine at Tula. And I know that as I was reading some information that was shared with me, that there's a rich cultural heritage of Union de Tula, which is the hometown of, is that your mother or
it's my wife?
Your wife. Okay.
My wife.
All right. And then so she had some experience with the cuisine.
So I'll answer that question. So Unión de Tula, that's a town in Jalisco.
Union.
And it literally translates to Union of Tula.
Okay.
The Tula part of it is actually the first 4 founding families that founded the town.
Okay.
So it's their initials of their last name. So literally, what the translation means is the union of these families that came together and started this community. Back when we were looking at names for the restaurant, I looked at different locations, and being in the construction kind of industry, I had a lot of connections with different developers and brokers. One of the places that we looked at was Specialized Real Estate, which is here out of Fayetteville.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Seth Mims. We were looking at possibly doing something. And at that point, the best advice that he gave me was, Juan, you have to find a name that could be easily pronounced in English and in Spanish. And I said, all right, great. Thanks, Seth. And at this point, I have no idea, right? I have no experience in this, so I'm learning as I'm going. And I go home, I talk to my wife, and I was like, hey, I met with Seth, and we talked about these things, and he mentioned a name that could be easily pronounced in English and in Spanish, preferably 2 syllables. And, so we're kind of talking, and she said, why not Tula? I just kind of stuck around, and I was like, there's a reason why I married her, and I think that she was really smart about it. But it wasn't just about it's easily pronounced in English or in Spanish, or that it's 2 syllables. It's the meaning behind it.
Yeah.
And what she mentioned to me is something that to this day I think is very true. Tula was a name of a town that, because families got together and started a community, well, we were experiencing the exact same thing with Tula here in Fayetteville. I had Startup Junkie that helped us, that they were very instrumental to guiding me in the right direction of getting connected with different people, kind of brainstorming. I had these ideas, but I didn't know how to get them together.
Sure.
Local architect that we worked with, Polk Stanley, consulting chef that we had that came from Chicago, which funny part about it is he has the same last name that I do. My last name is really, it's not a very common last name, and it happens to be that he's from Guerrero as well. Not from the same town my parents are from, but from Guerrero. And it was a cool kind of story of having him as well, convincing him. He was in Boston at that moment, convincing him to come and help us open up Tula. I called and I asked, and he said, man, I go to bigger cities and I do these restaurants and I help open up. I've done Chicago, California, Texas.
Right.
I'm in Boston right now. I'm good. Why should I go to Northwest Arkansas? And I said, give me a few days, come and visit. Let's talk. I'll show you around. And then you tell me if you think that this is worthy or not. Brought him in, pretty much tried to pitch him Northwest Arkansas, took him around, spent 3-4 days with him. And finally he agreed to come and help us out. So that was really great. But going back to it is we had all these different kind of pieces of these people coming in together, helping us establish the restaurant. And I almost felt that there was a very good connection to the name itself, right? Mm-hmm. Of what happened with the town that my wife is from.
Nice. I like that. So you bring this chef in, and he is kind of the inspiration behind the current menu that we see there?
Yeah. So I knew from the get-go that I wanted this to be traditional Mexican dishes.
Okay.
Tradition in the sense of many of these dishes take time, and there's a lot of things that go into making them really great. And I really wanted that to be the case. And something that I've told somebody the other day was these dishes are typically for special occasions. So I'll give you an example. Mole, for instance, reminds me of Christmas Eve.
Okay.
Reminds me of my grandmother, because we would always have mole on Christmas Eve. So in Mexico, we celebrate Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day.
Right.
So mole was one of those, right? Pozole reminds me of my birthday. My birthday is in June, and it could have been 98 degrees outside in Chicago, and we're eating hominy stew, right? That's what we're having for dinner because it was a dish that's meant for a celebratory reason.
Yeah.
And my parents were celebrating my birthday, so we would have, pozole. And I could go on and on with these dishes that we have. So I knew that I wanted simple menu and I wanted traditional dishes that typically you only have on a celebration. But I felt what good way to say I could have it every single day of the week at Tula because I'm celebrating that, there's another day. We're alive. There's a lot of things that go to it. And I felt that was a really good thing that we wanted to do.
That's interesting. What have been some of the fan favorites at the restaurant? What kind of tends to fly off the shelf?
So our mole is one of them. Which
is good. And for people that are not familiar with mole is traditionally, like I know in Oaxaca is where I really was exposed to mole. And it's got chocolate in it, right?
It does. So it depends on the region. I like to kind of relate it to barbecue.
Okay.
So,
that's a good way to example.
So there's a lot of different types of barbecues here in the United States. Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing with Mexico. Depending on the region that you're at, some of them could be spicier. Some of them are darker. Some of them are sweeter. So, more bitter. So there's different flavor profiles. Mm-hmm. Ours is on the sweeter side.
Okay.
So that's something that our family kind of grew up with. And that's one of the favorites. It has over 24 ingredients. It's a process. It takes about a day and a half to make this mole. And I think that's what's special about what we do at Tula is the people that we have working with us really take their time to do this right, to do it the traditional way that we do it. I could go and I've had countless people come in and say, hey, Juan, well, why don't you just buy the mole that already comes, in a can and you could make it a lot easier. And I said, no, this is the reason why we wanted to do this is for people to really truly have authentic Mexican food, which was what I felt was missed here in the area.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. And you haven't, there is a difference between mole out of a can and mole made with love from scratch like that. I know Chef Rafael Reyes from Yayo's, his mole is incredible. I took somebody there. They had never had it before. And they were like, this is on a whole nother level. So, but when you have good mole, the difference in terms of something that's just not made with love. So, yeah. So what are you've survived the pandemic. Congratulations to that. Kudos to you.
Yeah.
And you should see his smile, folks. But I think it's important for us to repeat that. So many restaurants went under, so many restaurants closed because of how things were during the pandemic. It's a very rough time for the service industry, very rough time for restaurants. What are you hopeful for now that you've kind of come out the other side of it? And where do you want to take Tula next?
So when we first opened Tula, I remember I had an interview and I was asked, why the restaurant and why Fayetteville? Mm-hmm. And my response to that was, my goal is for Tula to be a destination restaurant in Fayetteville and in Northwest Arkansas. And that was a very bold statement, I think, that I made back in 2020. Mm-hmm. Not knowing that we were going to make it, like you said, through the pandemic and kind of be on the other side. There was a lot of uncertainty that we had, just as everybody else did. But
sure.
That was always my goal, is to make Tula a destination restaurant in Fayetteville and in Northwest Arkansas. I truly believe that we have become a staple in Fayetteville and a destination restaurant in Northwest Arkansas. A lot of people that didn't know of Tula, once they started finding out, we had people coming from, as far as Bella Vista, right? Fort Smith, coming out and checking out our restaurant. And that made me happy to see that people were willing to come and check us out because they heard. And again, our marketing wasn't, I want to get everywhere and I wanted it to be organic. I wanted people to word of mouth for them to find out, because I always feel that we as humans, we always lean more towards the recommendation or approach of somebody that's dear to us, right?
Yeah.
If it's somebody that's my best friend and it's telling me, hey, you got to go check out this restaurant, that means that it must be good, right?
Yeah, I call that's intimate social proof.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is. So it's so we really...
You trust your friends. And when your friends say, hey, go check this place out, go do this, you do. And every now and then your friends will let you down, or it'll just be, you can agree to disagree. It's
correct.
like, yeah, it's not what I thought it was. But then a lot of times it's like, all right, I'm going to go. and see what it's all about.
Yeah. So, I think that we grew organically and we've been a destination restaurant, and I'm excited for what the future entails because, I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but, at Tula, I had a business partner. We also opened up a restaurant in Rogers, which I'm no longer a part of.
Mm-hmm.
But that was always my goal, was to continue to showcase Mexico through the eyes that I see it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about just vibrant colors and sombreros and donkeys and all these different things of what sometimes people think that is Mexican culture or Mexican food.
Yeah.
And now being back at Fayetteville and kind of going back to the roots of what started it all, I'm super excited because it was kind of an awakening to me in the sense of the people here in Fayetteville really supported us. The people here in Fayetteville really embraced us as a community. And I'm not saying that in Rogers that wasn't the case, but I'm really excited for what we're trying to do and to continue to just showcase that there's more to Mexican culture. And, and here in the future, we're going to have certain things that are going to really help us kind of continue to showcase that in Northwest Arkansas.
So let's talk about the future a little bit. What are your hopes and dreams for, say the next 4 or 5 years? I mean, this area is, like you said, you've seen it longer than I have because you were here back in, like I said, 08, 09. I got here in 2014 and I've been here almost 10 years now, and I can see tremendous difference in this area. What are you hoping for the next 3 to 5 years? And what are you hoping to accomplish with Tula in that period of time?
The way that I've seen it is it's no longer just about the food part of it.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is I had a conversation with somebody not so long ago, and we were talking about my staff.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I consider them as family because they've been there. Here at Tula, I've actually had about 60% of the people that worked with us during the pandemic and we opened still remaining with us. And that's when I said that to somebody, they were like, wow, that's very kind of shocking because, you get a lot of turnover in the restaurant industry. And, to me, I think that these people have been with me because I really have truly seen them as family. We all have the same goal. Obviously, yes, it's a business, but at the end of the day, our goal was always to provide good food, good hospitality, and a good, atmosphere for people to be at. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the core of what we wanted to do. But looking back at it, what I've gotten to notice or realize is that being part of this scene and being part of the hospitality industry, there's a lot of exposure.
Yeah.
And how can I use that exposure to then help the people that help me? And I mentioned to somebody, a lady that I always bring up, her name's Emilia. Emilia's become like a mom to me. If I'm sick, she's taking me food. If I need something, she's there. Mm-hmm. And vice versa, right? I've done the exact same thing. I've seen her kids grow. But part of the reason why I feel very connected to her is I see kind of myself when I was younger and my parents in kind of in her family and the way that they're coming up. And one of the things that really stuck up to me is Emilia does the best mole that we just talked about mole. She does this mole, right? And one thing that really struck to me one time was she couldn't do that for her own family. And I said, Emilia, well, what do you mean you can't do this for your own family? And she's like, Juan, well, there's two things. One is I'm here and I'm working late, so I don't have the time. And the second is this takes money and I really can't provide that for my family at the moment.
Sure.
And honestly, it made me sad to think that a person that can create something so delicious that helps all these guests that come to Tula can't even do this at her own home is something that really kind of struck with me. So because of that, I've looked at, how can we transition to the next point of not just my career in terms of being in the restaurants or restaurateur, if you want to call it that way, but as a person. Mm-hmm. Like, what can I do as a person to help out? What's going to bring peace and love to me and my family? I have a daughter now, and these are the things that kind of cliche when people always would say is like, Juan, you're going to find out whenever you're a dad. When you have your first child, you're going to find out a lot of things, right? Yeah. They're going to come and hit you, and you're going to understand.
No lie.
You're going to understand your parents, and you're going to understand all these different things. And right. I do now.
Yeah.
Like, I see the sacrifices my parents did. I see all these things that it really opened me to a different perspective. And what better way if I'm in a position to be able to help others to do that? And I think that's what I want to do with Tula. That's what I want to do with the next projects that we have lined up is how can I give back? And how can I use what I am doing now to help those people that that need it here in the area.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it sounds like there will be some expansion in the future and just opportunities to get more people to sit at your tables to enjoy the food that you guys are creating there.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that story. Well, man, you've shared so much. I really want to encourage our listeners to get out and support what you're doing. Again, like I said, you guys have been around for a while, but for the uninitiated, where can they find Tula in the Fayetteville Square?
So we are located inside the Pryor Center. It's 1 East Center Street, Monday through Thursday from 5 to 9 p.m., Friday and Saturday from 5 to 10 p.m.
Okay, so Monday through Thursday, 5 to 9 p.m., 5 to 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday.
Correct.
Okay, and you're closed on Sunday.
We are closed on Sundays, and we are closed during the day. That's one thing that really makes me happy and proud to say.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of restaurants here in Northwest Arkansas that only open for dinner.
Yeah.
And I like to say that we were the first Mexican restaurant that was able to do that. I think that makes me really happy to be able to say that.
To do that. Now, I love that. It's great. And you guys participate in a lot of events because every time I look up, Tula is part of the multiple events that are happening in the area too.
Yeah, so. Yeah, we like to be a part of them. Like I said, the community, not just Fayetteville, but the community as a whole, Northwest Arkansas really has supported and embraced us. And, we want to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. What's the website address?
TulaMX.com.
Okay, TULAMX.com. He is Juan Bahena, and he is the owner of Tula. And certainly want to encourage our listeners to go and check them out. If you do go in there, please mention that you heard about it first here at I Am Northwest Arkansas. And who knows, maybe they'll give you an extra lime in your margarita or something like that. But no, seriously, just let them know. Give them a shout out. Just let them know that you heard Juan's wonderful story here on the podcast and that you came in to support them because that's really what it's all about. And that's why we bring on these different proprietors and business owners that are here locally because we want to support them. We want to share our platform with them so that we can allow them to continue to expand their message and tell more people their story. So Juan, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. We really appreciate it. And we will certainly have you back here in the future to talk about your future exploits in the restaurant field.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I'm glad that I finally got a chance to sit down and talk with Juan. Just an outstanding young man that's really doing some amazing things here in Northwest Arkansas. And first, it starts off with his restaurant and also he's just a good guy. So I certainly want to encourage you to check out Tula for yourself and, let us know what you think. Send us an email back if you want to put some notes or write a comment in the show notes. You can do that. You can just visit iamnorthwestarkansas.com. Remember, our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. And as I said earlier at the opening of this episode, you can check us out also on Ozarks at Large every Tuesday, both at 12 noon and at 7 p.m. So I really want to encourage you to do that and support public radio where you can. And again, continue to support the podcast. But I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you back here next week for another new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit iamnorthwestarkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.